Right, folks. This is the first video of a series of kind of mini tutorials. So rather than trying to teach you how to make a complex product, we're going to break down the skills into separate parts. So extrusion, revolution, lofting, all that sort of stuff, which will allow you to build up a sort of repertoire or a portfolio of skills that then you can kind of build into your own products, your own projects. So we're going to start with extrusion in this first video, then we're going to look at revolving, then we're going to look at sweeping, and finally we're going to look at lofting. And then once we've done a little bit of that and you've practiced some different types of shapes, then we'll move on to things like assembly and more complex procedures like that. So hopefully you can see on my screen here, this is my kind of homepage on Onshape, and I'm going to start by creating a new document up here in the top left. So create document, and I'm just going to call this mini skills extrusion. Okay, create. Right, so here's my work area. So you should be familiar with this, but if you're not, just to remind you, this little area here is kind of our work envelope. These represent the sort of 3 dimensions of space we're going to be working in. In the top right up here, we've got our view cube. So we can look at it, we can click on different parts and look at it from different angles, which can be very useful. Underneath, sort of 3/4 views, all that sort of stuff. Now we're going to start very simply, so we're just going to do a simple extrusion, and the way to think about an extrusion, very simply, is we start with a 2-dimensional shape, and we're going to extrude it into a 3-dimensional object. So a good analogy for this is toothpaste. So when you're squeezing out toothpaste onto your toothbrush in the morning, if you imagine we're squeezing out a cylinder, we're extruding a cylinder, so what we've got is a 2D circle, which is the shape at the end of the toothpaste tube, and we're going to extrude the material inside through that circle. And if you extrude a circle into 3 dimensions, you end up with a cylinder. Another similar analogy would be Play-Doh factory. If you ever had Play-Doh factory when you were a kid, or now, not judging, then that's a similar thing. So you have these little dies, so you have like the star, and then you have the circle, and you have the spaghetti, and they're all 2D shapes, and we push a material through, so we're extruding. So that's how it works. So we don't create a cube, for example, which is what we're going to look at now. We don't draw a cube, we draw a square, and then we extrude into a cube. So let's start off, and we start off by producing a sketch. So if I click on sketch up here, all things start with a sketch. So here's the sketch up on the top left. And the first thing it asks me, now your little sketch pane might be up here or something like that. I try to keep it down here out of the way. So the first thing it's asking me in blue is what sketch plane would I like to use? Well, I'm going to, for this, I'm just going to use my front. So there's 2 ways I can click on the front. I can either click it here. You notice if my cursor and my mouse pointer in the middle there, if I hover over it, it goes yellow. That means if I click it, I'll be selecting the front work plane. So I'll be saying new sketch on the front work plane. Another way to do it is over here on the left. You can see these 3 things here. We've got top, front, right. I could click front there and that would do the same job. When you get, it doesn't really matter, quite frankly, which method you use to select the work plane, but when you get better at this and you're creating more complex objects, the screen can get very sort of clogged up with parts and lines and shapes and features and all the rest of it. So it can be really useful to use it over here as well. So I'm going to just use it on the left. So I've clicked on front, and you can see now when I've done that, it's shown me an indication of where sketch 1 is. And if I just turn this around, you'll see that sketch 1 is lined up with the front. Okay. Now I'm going to do a sphere. No, I'm not going to do a sphere. I'm going to do a cube to start with. But I want to draw the sketch. I need to do a sketch of a square, and it's much easier if I look at it front on. If you were drawing on a piece of paper, you wouldn't have the piece of paper over at an angle. You'd have it in front of you. So if I click on front on my view cube in the top right, if I click on front, it will show me the front. Lovely. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw a square. Now you'll notice, because I'm in sketch mode, these have changed. And now I've got sketching tools, whereas before I had some 3D tools. These are now sketching tools, so I can do loads of stuff with this. But we're not going to learn them all straight away. First thing we're going to do is create our square. So we don't create a square necessarily, we create a rectangle and then dimension it as a square. So if I click on the arrow to the side, I can select different types. I'm going to go for a center point rectangle. What that means is it's going to draw it from the center out. So if you look on the screen here, you see my cursor in the middle? Now that black dot in the middle is the origin. When it goes yellow, it means I'm close to it. When it goes yellow with a yellow box, that means I'm on it. So that's really useful because it means I can start everything from the same point. So I'm going to go until I get the square. There it is. And I'm going to pull out a rectangle. Now, I've clicked to stop it and it goes blue. It's important now that you don't click again. If you notice at the bottom, there's this little white box. That white box is a dimension. There's also a box here. If I hover, it goes white without clicking. When it goes white, the little box around it, it means I can just enter a number. So I'm going to make this 100. And if I press enter, it automatically selects the next dimension that I can change. So type 100 again. I now have a square that is 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. And you can see that because we've got our dimension arrows. We also call them, so they're dimensions, but you also call them constraints because that is now constrained to 100 by 100. Now I could change those, but I can't change things that would prevent that from being 100, for example. So I'll explain more about that as we do more complex things down the road. So I'm happy with that sketch. And now all I need to do is extrude it. Now there's a couple of ways I can do it. I could do it straight away, but what I prefer to do, I think it's good practice, is to just tick this. We're happy 100 by 100. If you press tick here on sketch 1, that's it, that's a sketch now. Now it's a really good idea to learn to name your sketches because you end up, if you're doing a really complex project, you can end up with dozens of parts, and if they're all called like sketch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, blah, 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 it can become really difficult and you can get lost quite easily. So it's really good practice, even though it's not necessarily needed on something this small, it's good practice to get into. So we're going to rename that. I'm going to call it a square. And my doorbell's just gone. So I'm going to go and answer that. Right, apologies about that. My doorbell went. Okay, so where was I? So yeah, we're looking at the front now. I've renamed it square. Now what's interesting here when we're extruding, if I go up to the top right of the view cube here, you see where it goes blue? If I click there, that shows me in a kind of a 3/4 view, trimetric view. And this is good because it allows you to see how the extrusion works. So I can't extrude at the minute because I've got nothing selected. My sketch exists, but I need to select it. So if I come over here, and I could just click on it very carefully. That's the sketch, but that's easy to make a mistake. So what you should always do is use it over here. If I select square, it can only select that sketch. Now when it's selected, I can do things to it. And for the purposes of this video, I'm going to extrude it. And that is conveniently the first feature here next to where it says sketch. So just to the right of it, those two little cubes. If you click on that, there is a shortcut, which is Shift E, but you don't need to, that's not really a problem. Now, it automatically suggests a 25mm extrusion. It's just an arbitrary number to show you what it would look like, and it helps to demonstrate which way it's going to extrude it in space. That's extruding from the back forwards. It doesn't really matter. You can change that round if you click on that arrow there in the middle, or this arrow here, and it just flips it which way it's going to extrude it. You can also, there's various little bits and bobs you can do, but for this all we need to do is change that figure there to 100, because we've made X and Y are 100mm, sorry, X and Z, and Y, the depth, needs to be 100mm as well, otherwise it's not a cube. So type 100, press enter. That just allows me to see what it looks like. I'm happy with that, and when I'm happy with it, I tick it. Okay, lovely jubbly. There it is. There's my cube. Now, one further thing we can do just to show you a different way of doing sketches, I'm going to put a hole through this. So what we've done there, we've extruded by adding material, but we can also extrude by subtracting material. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a hole through the side of the cube, this right hand side here. So a hole will be a cylinder. A cylinder is 3D. What's a cylinder in 2 dimensions? From the end it's going to be a circle, so I need to draw a circle. So up to sketch again, and it's going to ask me, where do you want your sketch? Now I don't have to use work plane like I did the first time. This time I can just select that side of the cube I've made, and it's called that face of extrude 1. There you go. So that is where my sketch is. So now to look at it, I wouldn't look from the front, I'm going to look from the right. So if I go to my view cube, click on the right, and now I can see what I'm going to be sketching. So I'm going to sketch a circle, so I go up to my circle here, and now I could just plonk it anywhere, and then I could use dimensioning to position the centre of the circle so I get it exactly where I want it within that square. But there's an easy way to do it. So if you look carefully at my cursor here, if I run my cursor, I'm not clicking, I'm just going to run it along. There you go, see that little yellow appeared? That is saying to me that if I clicked, I would be on the centre of that line. But also, if I go over here, it happens again. So if I go to, as long as I've hovered over both of these, if I go to one of them and drag down, you see that? Hopefully you can see that little yellow line. That's a construction line. I'm not clicking, I'm just being careful, and then it'll pick up. There you go. It'll automatically pick up the other point I previously hovered over. That now I know, because that's all lit up, I know that's the centre. So click, drag it out. Let's say this hole's going to be 50 millimeters, so just type 50, press enter. There we go. Okay, happy with that. Tick, rename it, circle, enter. Okay, and now I'm going to extrude it. So I'm going to go do what I did previously. I'm going to go back to my 3/4 view. I'm going to select the circle over here. So that sketch is now selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to extrusion again. But this time, it's automatically assuming I want to add material. I don't. I could, but I don't. I want to go through. So what I'm going to do is click on remove. And automatically says, we're going to go back through. And again, it's standard setting. The arbitrary number it's come up with is 25 millimeters. Well, that's cool. If I looked at it, that would just go 25 millimeters in, but I don't want that. I want to go all the way through. So where it says blind, if I click here and go through all, press enter, let's see what that looks like. I've created a hole that goes all the way through, so I'm happy with that. Press tick. Job's a good one. And if I spin round, there you go, I can see that that's been successful. And while we're here, I'll just show you a couple of edge features. So, in fact, there's a couple more things I want to show you. I'm going to show you some edge features first. So, an edge feature, if you imagine a corner of something, that's like an edge. A flat area like this where I'm now, you can see it's been selected, that's a face, and edges are these kind of corners. And the good thing about this program is it'll highlight, before you click, it'll highlight what you would select if you did click. So if it's highlighted like that, and I click it, it's selected a face. If it's highlighted like that, I've selected an edge. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do these 3 edges here. So I'm going to go for this one, click, click, click. So I've just selected those 3 edges. I'm going to do this one as well, for the hell of it. Okay, now what I can do is I can apply an edge feature really quickly. So up here are my edge features, and I'm going to go for what's called a fillet, and that kind of rounds the corners off. And it automatically sets it for 15 millimeters. I think that's a bit too big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to 5. Press enter to see what it looks like. Let's go for 10. 10 might look better. Cool, I like 10, so I'm going to tick it. If I look at it, you can see those three edges are now curved. Lovely jubbly. And I could just keep going around and doing that on all the edges, and I can remove them, etc, etc. So that's great. And that's it. That is it. That's it for the first video, so have a go at that. I just want to talk about a little bit of a pitfall, something that can happen if you aren't careful. And I'm actually going to do it on the same drawing here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Sketch, New Sketch. I'm going to do it on the front work plane. Click on the front work plane, and I'm going to look at it from the front. So I don't want to draw here. And I could do. Let's say I'm going to do a circle again. Pick my circle. The centre's already marked on this one. Now what say we click it. I wanted to make it 50. I would just type 50. But what if by mistake we did something else and forgot to change that? You're like, oh no, how do I dimension that circle? So I'm just going to do Control Z to get rid of that second circle. And now I've got no option, even if I hover over it, I've got no way of changing the dimension of that sketch. So I have to use what's called the dimensioning tool. So up here, where it says it's like an arrow between two lines, that's dimension tool. Quick way to get to it is just to press D. So if I just press D, and if you look at my screen now, what happens to this? If I press D, it selects dimensioning tool. Now I'm not drawing, what's going to happen is it's just looking for things to give sizes to. So I could click on that line, pull it out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the outside of the circle and drag it away. It's trying to pick up. That's gone slightly wrong. Oh, it's got rid of my circle. Let's try that again. Sketch, front, circle. Okay, I'm just going to tick that so it's dimensioned right. If I want to go, so I've done my little circle. If I double click on that circle, oh, let's rename it. Circle 2. If I want to edit that, what I need to do is go over here and double click. And now it will allow me to use my dimensioning tool, click and drag from that circle. There we go. And now I can change it. So let's say 50. So that's the other way. You can manually dimension as well. Let's say I wanted to put a dimension between two lines. I might want to do... No, I won't do that for now. I will do it. I'll do it from the centre of the circle. So I've made that circle 50 millimeters in diameter. But let's say I wanted to change the position of it. Well, I could... Let's have a look what this is. So if I double click the circle, go to dimension, if I click on the centre of the circle, and then click on this bit here, or this bit here, it'll give me the distance. Now, if I typed in a different number, I could change that distance. Okay, so I could actually shift the circle. We won't do that for now. So I'm going to double click the circle again. No, I'm not. I'm going to single click it to select it. And let's just do that extrusion again. Remove. I'll tell you what, let's go all the way through again. Tick, and there we go. And it's projected or extruded that circle all the way through. That's it, guys. So that's that first one on extrusion. Have a play with it, have a practice with it, re-watch the video as many times as you need to, and in the next one we will look at what should we do? Revolving. We'll do revolving, I think, on the next one. Okay, cheerio.